In the screencast, I will show how to create a Lively application that can act as a remote control for your computer. So what we will do is, I will start out with a Lively world, and in that Lively world we will create an interface, a remote interface that can, for example, be loaded on a smartphone. And this interface will interact with a server component that we will also create for in the context of that Lively world. The server component will offer an interface that can be used by that remote control page to send messages that will have an effect on basically the computer that is running the server. So for example, you can remote control the volume of your audio output, all other things. Okay, this is the summary of what I'm going to show. Let's get started. First of all, let's start out with a remote interface that we can create that can be easily used, for example, from a smartphone. Okay. So as a first step, we will go into the world menu and choose the run command entry, and we will type in iframe, and we will open up an iframe here in that world. Just click on it. The URL that we will enter will point to a HTML page that does not exist yet, and that we are going to create. So we will point it to a localhost, so to our local server. We are running here, and we will call the page remote interface. I'm being currently told that there is a file not found error here. This is okay, since the HTML page does not exist yet. What we can do is we can choose the edit page entry from the menu, and we will get a workspace that allows us to type HTML in. So let's move that iframe over to this side, make it a little bit smaller, and let's start out. So we just create a simple interface. This example, I will basically just create a slider. So we can render sliders in HTML using input tags. So what I will do here is I will just have an input with the type range. When I accept the change here, when I save that code, the page over here on the right side will update. So it will basically always display what is currently being typed in the left workspace. Okay, to intercept and interact when the slider value is changing, we will add a little script here in that world, a little JavaScript code that will get a reference to that slider. Elements by name input. I can directly evaluate code in that workspace over here, and the code that's being evaluated runs in the context of that iframe that we created. So you can just type stuff in and try it out without actually having to reload anything. So we will get the input element, so this is our slider, and then we will use the change event handler to react to changes. So here we will say slider add event listener change function, and then we will maybe just first of all have an alert, and what we will output is the slider value. Let's just save that and move the slider a bit, and then okay, we get the output 63. I think the range of the slider right now is 100, the maximum value, and 0 is the minimum value. Okay, let's also display that value. For that we just add a label for slider 1. Okay, label, and here we just add an ID, and this is our slider 1. Okay, and when we change the slider, we will just update the label. Let's slider labels 0, text content equals slider value. So when we change that and move the slider around, then we will see that the label gets updated with the value of that slider. Okay, so I will fast forward a little bit. Building that HTML stuff is quite boring. I will basically use some CSS styling that I just paste into that workspace now. That will actually render the slider a little bit different, so we get basically a bigger version of that slider that will actually be usable from a smartphone, but it's still just basically the slider element. And then let's also just initialize the value in the beginning. So now we got something like that. Okay, so this is the first step that we need for our remote control. The next step is to hook this HTML page up to our server, so that we can actually do something on our computer that we have here. So in order to do that, we will use the Lively messaging system that will send messages to the server. So the first step to get started with it is to open up the subserver viewer and to add a new subserver. Let's see, remote control server. So in that server, we will extend the already existing Lively interface and add a new service, a new handler for our remote control here. I will paste in a little code snippet, and I will explain what it does. Second. So we first get a reference to the Lively services that are already there. If we already have a bunch of Lively services, so when you inspect that services object, you will see that there are already handlers installed for all kinds of things. And what we want to do is we just want to add new service. So in order to do that, we will use the extend method, and we will add a service called remote control, and then value changed. And this is basically just a function that gets on the one hand a reference to the session server. We don't really need that right now, but we need the connection object to read the value from, and the message object that we get passed along. Okay, and actually let's also require the util module. Okay, so in here we can basically do stuff when something happens over here. So first of all, just to figure out what's actually going on, just add a log statement here that will show us the content of the message. So we just add like a little inspect call once we get a message. Okay, I will save that. And the last steps that we need to actually make it work is we have to add a little code snippet in the context of that HTML page so that a message gets sent over to the server. So we will do that by first of all loading in the Lively to Lively interface. This is basically just a JavaScript file that we load. And when the JavaScript file is loaded, then we can connect to the Lively to Lively network. And this is really simple. We will do that using this little code snippet here. So we will connect to Lively, and we will use the domain that we have loaded that remote interface HTML page from. So it's basically just our local server that we have running here. Okay, and when we have that, then we can in the change handler actually send off a message. So we, instead of just updating the slider value, we will add a little code snippet here that will send a message to our server. The server is identified using the tracker ID of the session object that we have available here. We will use as a selector the value changed message handler that we just implemented, and as the parameter that we pass along, we will use the ID of the slider that we set. This is basically this, so slider 1, and we will pass in the value of this slider as well. So let's save that, and let's move that thing around a little bit and open up the log, the server log. So when we move the slider now, we will see that we get a printed result of the message object because we added this console log statement over here. So, and we will see that the message is basically just a JavaScript object that has an attribute data, and that data contains the values that we passed along. So now, in order to do something, we will just add a little statement over here. So we access message data and the value part of the data. And let's say we want to change the volume, the audio output volume of our computer over here. So I'm running on a platform. I'm running on a Apple computer running macOS, so I can use Apple script to interface with basically the operating system. The code that I can use for that looks like that. So we execute some Apple script code, and we set the output volume of the system to the value that we got from the message. We will just run it as an Apple script command. We also need the exec function. For that we need to require the child process module and in particular the exec function. Okay, so let's save that and I can close it. I can clean up this a bit and then let's just try it out. So right now you don't see anything happening, but let's try to see if it actually works. So let's play some music. Okay, so this works. Now let's see if it actually also works when we load that remote control in an iPhone. So the server that we connect to is now not the localhost server anymore, so we can't use localhost because the iPhone doesn't know what localhost is in its own context. But since I'm connected in the same network, so my computer is connected to the same Wi-Fi as my iPhone, I can just use the IP address that is used there. So config that would be that IP address 10.0.1.2. Okay, and we want to load the remote control world. Okay, we have our slider here, and when I move it and at the same time play some music, okay, this gives you some impression of how that stuff actually works. Let me jump ahead and show you a little extended version of that world. So just to give you an idea of basically how to go forward with it. So I will paste in an updated snippet of the HTML code for that remote interface page here. In here I've extended the CSS styling a little bit to make it look a little bit nicer, and I've also added 2 more sliders to the world, and I'm using the underscore swaddle method to basically rate limit firing the event. So since basically every move of the slider would trigger an event, and we actually don't want to update too often, we can use a swaddle that will only update the event handler or call the event handler every 200 milliseconds most. So when I save it, you will see this is how it looks like, and on our iPhone this looks like that. Alright, and then let's also extend the handler over here a little bit, so we want to hook up a second slider. So when we use our first slider, we set the volume, and with our second slider, we interact with the VLC application. It's a video player, and we basically use a slider to jump back and forth in the timeline of the video that is being played. So when I save that and open up the VLC application, just play a video here, then I can go ahead and use the remote control over here, and when I move the second slider, I can go back and forth in the video. Okay, this should just give you an impression of how to basically create a little remote control interface that lets you script and customize your own computer. You can do all of that with Lively. It's pretty easy and simple actually, because you can basically at any point just look into the running applications, evaluate stuff in the context of the application, inspect their state, and basically just continue to develop with that without having to restart all that stuff. Maybe you are interested in hooking up some hardware gadgets to such a remote control interface. If so, I would really like to learn about it. So just shoot me a mail or something. Okay, thanks for watching.